Here's Mercedes' smallest SUV with also one of the smallest diesel engines you'll ever encounter. On top of that, a big ambitious package of tech. Let's see what size it presents as we drive this 2013 GLK250 and check the tech. Now, the first thing you're going to notice on this guy is that it doesn't look like any other Mercedes. You got to wonder who Daddy was. It bears no DNA resemblance to basically anything else they make. Not quite sure how that happened, but you'll either look at it and say that is a really handsome small SUV, or it looks a lot like a 2005 Forester, or both. Now, the first thing when you get in this Mercedes, you realize what they haven't done is downscale the interior. It's the same look, the same styling, and the same high-quality materials you'll find in the bigger SUVs or across their line. So that's good. Let's start with our basic control. Mercedes hasn't changed that in ages. You've got the command knob with a back and a clear button. They've always had pretty darn good map quality, and that hasn't changed. Destination entry, of course, by voice is very simple. Enter destination.
Please repeat.
Enter destination. Right off the bat, you know this is going to annoy me.
Please wait. Please select a line number.
2.
Number 2.
Because I have to do every little piece of the address.
Do you want to enter town first?
One talk at a time.
Or street first?
Enter town first.
Please select a line number.
I hate that. Enter state and city and number.
Please wait.
I hate that.
Please select a line number. Town name.
Oh. So let's go to media now. Lots of sources, AM and FM with HD radio, satellite radio. Again, that's optional, by the way. Disc, DVD is optional. Music register is a 10 gig hard drive. Not interested, but you can get it if you want. There's USB, which comes base, but then there's also media interface, which comes optional, which is another way to hook up your iPod. And the auxiliary jack, the good old female auxiliary, lives in here as well. That's standard. Now, base audio on this guy is 6 speakers and some kind of amplification. I don't think any of them will ship with that. They're mostly going to be upgraded with Harman Kardon Logic 7, which is 11 speakers plus a powered sub. And you've got surround sound support because that same package brings in the DVD drive. Now let's go to this globe icon on the upper right. That's where things get interesting, and I put interesting in quotes. You can see I'm establishing a data connection. Basically, you've got to get 2 layers of telematics and pay for those on an ongoing basis, as well as then paying for your app service because they require each other. That gets a little pricey. It is horribly slow. And there's a lot of lockout where things don't work when you're driving. It's kind of a joke. I want to just say I'm going to clip my phone on the windshield and get something that I can actually use by voice safely while moving. The things you can use while you're parked include Google Local Search, which is going to look for local POIs, Yelp, Facebook, a very abbreviated version, and My Mercedes-Benz Financial Services, so you can make a payment on your car from here, which I find kind of silly self-promotion. Now let's move on to driver assistance technology. Standard includes this sort of drowsy alert. The car is always measuring inputs on the wheel, the pedals and such, and can detect from there if it thinks you're falling asleep, and then it will blast a little alert on the dash and ring a tone as well. It's not looking at your eyelids, though, unlike some Japanese cars that use that for detection. There is passive, lane drift warning, and blind spot warning. You can also step up to active on both of those, along with adaptive cruise control that maintains speed and distance. And you have to option into a rear camera. That makes me nuts. Vehicles that cost far less often do. Now, if you think that 250 on the butt means a 2.5 liter engine, that's wishful thinking. This is way smaller, 2.1 liter inline 4 diesel. That's the smallest thing Mercedes fields, at least in the US market that I know of. Now, the key to this little guy working out are turbos, 2 of them. It's a true bi-turbo. A small high-pressure one up near at the top, it's actually on the exhaust manifold, and a larger lower-pressure turbo downstream the exhaust away. 200 horsepower specifically, that's okay. 369 foot-pounds of torque. There's your key. That helps to move this 4,300-pound vehicle up to 60 in just 7 seconds, which is quite respectable for its weight and its profile, while delivering 2433 mpg, which we'll check out the reality of when we go on the road in a moment. By the way, all these GLK250s go out to a 7-speed true cogged automatic, and all these guys are 4MATIC all-wheel drive. Let's go for a run. One of the first things I notice about the GLK250 is what I don't notice about the GLK250. You may have noticed that huge gasket around the hood opening when we were over in the engine bay. That, I believe, has to be an example of the effort that they've gone to try and seal out or at least isolate that diesel clatter. Now, that little diesel is always reminding you to some degree that it is a very small diesel. It doesn't have the same urgency of torque that I find in bigger turbo diesel vehicles. It has great torque, but it doesn't quite get to the area of being giddy. It's just sufficient to ample, which is absolutely fine. Also, we have this automatic transmission doing its thing and the turbos having to spool up. So there's a little bit of a crack throttle response that's missing here that I have found in other turbo diesel cars, but it's very torquey once you get things spooled up. The handling is really nice. I wasn't expecting that. There was no AMG package or other nonsense on this car. It's just a GLK250. But here on this twisty road, the body roll is really minimal. It's really planted. It's very different than the RAV4 we had a couple days ago when it was all, swinging to and fro like a ship. Now, I'll also point out this button down here, E and S, an eco mode and a sport mode. I don't know. I haven't felt a real big difference. I think if anything, it tends to change the transmission behavior more than throttle response. Real world MPG, you see, we're doing close to 30 over a lot of miles since we've had this vehicle. I wouldn't be surprised if you got 35 average on long freeway trips. Okay, let's price this 13 GLK250. Starts off just a hair below 40 grand, 39.8 something. Then there's the premium package for about 3,400. Panoramic roof, power liftgate, satellite radio, Harman Kardon Logic 7 audio, $800. That's a definite. $2,800 for a driver assistance package that has active blind spot and lane departure tech and adaptive cruise control. All of those active. We're looking at a car that is pushing 51,000 done CNET style, but not even fully loaded. And you're looking at a vehicle that should have really good durability, partly because of that diesel.